I'm not here to give you all the answers and tell you about all the problems that we're experiencing on the Earth with climate change. You only need to pick up a newspaper and know that something's terribly wrong. And one of the biggest symptoms is that the Arctic Ocean is losing its ice. The Arctic ice loss problem is blatant and a symptom of putting too much CO2 into the atmosphere by burning fossil fuels. The CO2 traps more of the energy from the sun across the whole Earth, and that energy slowly warms the ocean, causes the ocean to acidify, causes typhoons to be more frequent with larger intensity, causes glaciers to melt and sea levels to rise, and causes the jet streams to change and bring about drought to some areas and floods and giant snowstorms to others. The climate change is becoming a big, dangerous mess that affects almost every living thing on Earth, mostly in negative ways. Already we've lost half the world's coral reefs due to increased water temperature. 90% of edible fish species are in alarming population decline. Scientists are finding that all around the world crustaceans, like shrimps, crabs, and clams, now have thinner shells because of CO2 acidification of the ocean. You hear stories almost every day about these catastrophes. Some even say that we're going through an extinction event.
This week, one of the biggest stories of our lifetime, climate change, and the alarm.
Scientists are warning that the splitting off of a vast island of ice from the main Arctic ice pack is the most alarming evidence of climate change seen so far.
Since 1975, NASA satellites have been circling the Earth, photographing the Arctic Ocean every day. During the winter, the sea ice freezes and covers an area over 14 million square kilometers. And during the summer, the ice melts back toward the North Pole to a minimum, which is normally about 7 million square kilometers. Over the last 10 years, NASA has found that the Arctic Ocean has lost 1.4 million square kilometers of ice during the summer when the ice melts back from its winter maximum. NASA is predicting that as soon as this summer or the next, for the first time since man has been on the Earth, that the North Pole may become free of ice. To give you an idea of how much ice is being lost, think of it like this. On an average year, we lose 140,000 square kilometers of ice. That's the size of the state of Louisiana. It's 1,500 times the size of Manhattan Island in New York City. And that's every year we lose that much ice. Why is this important? Why should we care? The sea ice loss causes a positive feedback loop for global warming. So now it's not just a CO2 problem. During the summer, when there's daylight in the Arctic 24 hours a day, ice reflects 90% of the energy from the sun. But now that the ice is melted, 80% of that energy is absorbed by the water. This means that as more ice melts, more global warming happens. It's a positive feedback loop. Well, how big is it? Let me tell you. Last summer, a combination of NASA satellite data and ground measurements have verified that the increased power absorbed from the sun is on an average 4 watts per meter squared. And when we multiply that across the 1.4 million square kilometers of ice that we've lost, we get a whopping 56 terawatts of extra power absorbed because the ice is melted where it normally wouldn't. To give you an idea of how much power that is, think about this. The capacity of the US electricity grid is 1 terawatt. The kinetic energy of the average hurricane is 1 terawatt. So you can see that adding 56 terawatts of extra heat from the sun is not a good thing for climate change. It's an emergency. We need to stop it now if we can. This problem is very urgent. At this rate of ice loss, we're putting into motion a positive feedback loop of global warming that will be very, very difficult to get under control. If we wait until there's no more ice left, if we wait until the ocean is warmed to the point where ice no longer forms, then it's too late. For the sake of our grandchildren, we must do everything in our power to make it stop. That's why I Am Walrus is so important. We found a way to make it stop.